lice, which prick them like arrows. Wild animals. Before the attack, the general calls on other armies to join him in the fight. Similarly, Hashem called the wild animals to gather and fight against the Egyptians. Death of the animals. Before the battle, the general sent special messengers who find ways to destroy the enemy's animals. Hashem brought a special plague, Dever, upon the Egyptians' animals, and they died. Blisters. The general looked for ways to destroy soldiers in the enemy camp so there will be fewer soldiers to fight. Hail. The general bombs the cities with rocks and missiles. Grasshoppers. Finally, the general and his army enter the enemy city and destroy it. Darkness. The general throws many enemies into jail. Killing the firstborn. The general kills the enemy leaders to frighten the people and to show them that he is in charge. Now, this is an interesting discussion which I have with many people. And this medrash that we're going to say now answers this. We're not talking about why the Egyptians, I mean, if you do say these 10 plagues happen, of course, and we do, then it's pretty frightening. You know, blood, Nile River, you don't have a water source, and you got these wild animals, your animals die, then your crops get destroyed, then the firstborn, I mean, and a few other plagues. So why did it all happen to the Egyptians? Were they really deserving of them? So this is the answer to that question. They all deserved it. Each plague matched the bad thing the Egyptians had done to the Jewish people. So let's see. Blood. The Egyptians used to force the Jews to get them water from the river. So Hashem turned the water into blood. And another reason Hashem brought the first punishment out of the river Nile was that the Egyptians thought that the Nile was a holy river. By turning the river water to blood, Hashem showed them that he rules over the Nile. Frogs. The Egyptians used to order the Jews, bring us worms, frogs, snails, and insects. We want to have fun with these animals. Since they forced the Jews to collect frogs for them, that they had frogs put upon them. Lice. The Egyptians used to command the Jews, sweep the floor of our homes and alleys and rake our fields. And now their fields were now into dust where the Jews didn't have to sweep. Wild animals. The Jews would tell the Jews, we need lions, tigers, and bears for our zoos and circuses. Get these animals for this. This was only a wicked excuse to send the poor Jews far out into the desert, into the woods, to keep them away from their families. Death of the animals. The Egyptians also forced the Jews to be their shepherds and cattle drivers in order to send them to distant lands and keep them away from their wives and families. Blisters. Another main idea of the Egyptian was to order the Jews around in the bathhouse. Heat water for me. Get me cool water. So they got blisters that would hurt them. They could not take any more baths. Another reason was the Egyptians were punished with ugly blisters was they considered Jews to be a people of a lower class. An Egyptian would never eat together with a Jew. So the Egyptians brought upon the Egyptians blister stores that they made them look so disgusting that no one had anything to do with them. Here's a picture of the blood. You could see I'm sure the way it was that the Egyptians didn't really care to drink blood out of the Nile River. And that's the first plague of blood. And just even continuing, we'll get into blood in a second. Hail, that they planted gardens, now they're destroyed. Grasshoppers, because that they had to work in the fields, and darkness, they had to carry around candles in the dark. Well, let's talk about this blood that you see in your picture now, and we'll talk about the first plague. In front of Pharaoh and his servants, Aaron stretched out his stick out of the river Nile, and suddenly the river and all water in Egypt turned into blood. In ancient time, many nations drank blood. The Egyptians would perhaps have drunk blood also. And now Hashem caused all the fish in the river Nile to die. This made the river smell so much that the Egyptians could not drink its blood. Not only was the river filled with blood, all water in the land of Egypt turned into blood too. An Egyptian would go to the bathhouse to take a bath. He found no water to use for bathing. There was even blood even in dry places in Egypt. There was pools of blood on benches and in beds. He found himself sitting in a pool of blood. In the land of Goshen, as you see in the next picture here, that the Jewish person is drinking water while the Egyptian is drinking blood, or trying to at least. In the land of Goshen, where the Jews lived, the water had not turned into blood. The Egyptians traveled to Goshen in order the Jews to give them drinks. But you know what happened as soon as an Egyptian would be handed water by a Jew and would try to swallow it? It turned into blood. Some Egyptians told the Jews, we want to buy water from you. When they paid money for the water, it did not become blood. As soon as the Egyptians found this out, they all began to buy water. The Jews earned a lot of money for 7 days until Hashem stopped the plague. Now we're up to the second plague, which you see in this next picture of frogs on your screen. Big frogs, not just little frogs. Now we're going to send frogs. Now Hashem therefore made a gigantic frog hop out of the river Nile, as you see in the picture. The Egyptians didn't like this big ugly animal and hit it with sticks. Let's kill this ugly frog monster. But instead of dying from the blows, the monstrous frog spat out little frogs every time it was hit. It was terrible. More frogs came out of the river, and soon the land of Egypt was filled with frogs. The frogs croaked and croaked. They made noise more than an army of trumpet blowers. When an Egyptian wanted to say something, his friend could not understand them. The frogs croaked too loudly. Let's go to a quiet corner, the Egyptian would shout into his friend's ear. But he could never find a quiet corner because the frogs croaked everywhere. The frogs hopped into all the Egyptians' houses. When you see a little bit picture here now, as they're baking bread. When an Egyptian woman baked bread, the frogs jumped into the oven. They were baked together with the bread, so the bread tasted of burnt frog. It tasted so disgusting that Egyptians had lost their appetite. Now we're up to the third plague, and here's a big picture about the lice. Third picture about lice. Now Pharaoh Aaron stretched out a stick, and all the dirt turned into lice. Do you know what lice are? Better if you don't, but they are insects as tiny as pinheads that nest in a person's hair or on his body, and it itch him terribly. One Midrash explains one story that Hashem brought 14 different kinds of lice upon the Egyptians. Some of them were the size of chicken eggs. Some were large as even duck eggs. Only the Jews were not infested. And still, the Egyptians could not create lice, but the Pharaoh did not want to listen to him. We're up to the fourth plague now, and we're up to the wild animals. Fourth plague of wild animals. Warn Pharaoh again, and let him bring wild animals in the land of Egypt. Pharaoh didn't take the warning, and therefore the desert came out lions, bears, and panthers. They roamed in the fields and vineyards and even invaded the Egyptians' homes. Big birds flew in together with them, flapping their wings and making a terrible noise. Egyptians locked their doors and windows to stop the animals from entering. Hashem, however, sent certain animals ahead of the others that could open the doors and windows. Only the Jews were not attacked by any wild animals. Pharaoh was scared to death. He called Moses and Aaron, and the Jews are no longer slaves, they're free. Do what you want, but get these wild animals out of there. And in truth, they went out. We're up to the fifth plague now, a nice little picture. Well, not so nice for the Egyptians, I guess, but the death of the wild animals. Just the death of the animals. The fifth plague was the next to come and to teach Pharaoh another lesson. Pestilence, by the dever in Hebrew, death of the animals. In the land of Goshen where the Jews lived, though, no animals died. Some smart Egyptians tried a trick. They said, I will sell you my animals just while the plague lasts. Afterwards, they will be mine again. But those animals died because Hashem knew their trick. And still, Pharaoh still did not want to do any tshuva, any repentance. And we're up to the sixth plague with another little picture about the blisters. The blisters spread upon the terrible skin disease of the Egyptians and their animals. Blister sores that hurt them very much. Now, the Almighty commanded Moses and Aaron to pick up 2 handfuls of coal ash. That's how it's going to start. Then Moses picked up with one hand all 4 fistfuls of ash. That was a big miracle. And he threw them into the sky. Pharaoh became so sick from the blisters that he had to stay in bed. The Egyptians, magicians, became so ill that they left Pharaoh's palace in shame and disgrace, never returned there. We're up to the 7th plague now. The picture is of hail. All right. See all the hail coming down? The thunderclaps were so mighty that many Egyptians died from the shock. When a particularly loud thunderclap set in, Pharaoh fell on the floor. But the Almighty gave him strength to get up so that this evil person should be alive to be punished by the rest of the plagues. Many Egyptians were hit by big hailstones and perished. These hailstones contained not only ice, but also fire. This was a miracle. Usually the fire would consume the ice, or the ice extinguished the fires. Some of the Egyptians were burnt by the fire. Again, Pharaoh calls Moses, and Aaron says, I'm letting them to go out. But afterwards, Pharaoh hardened his heart. We're going to go now into the 8th plague, which was the grasshoppers. Here's a big picture of grasshoppers that terrible upon the Egyptians. That Pharaoh says, we'll never let them go. Egyptians had often seen grasshoppers before, but never in their lives had they seen so many at one time. There were millions. The sky was so full of them that you could no longer see the sun. They swarmed into the fields like a gigantic blanket of hopping creatures that left not even the tiniest spot free. The last plague hail had destroyed almost all of Egyptians' grains, but now the grasshoppers attacked and every bit of crop still remained. They ate and ate until there was nothing left. Then we're up to the 9th plague now, which is the plague of darkness. Pharaoh did not enjoy the relief from the grasshoppers for long. Now the plague of darkness set in. Day was darker than night. The night was even darker than that. The Egyptians could no longer recognize even outlines or images, for the darkness swallowed them in the thickest black. It did not help to light candles and torches. It always remained dark as pitch. After 3 days of darkness, the plague worsened. Hashem had caused a black fog to turn so thick that Egyptians could no longer move. One who was sitting could not stand up. One who was standing could not sit down. Stuck in the black, tar-like thickness, every Egyptian was frozen in the position in which he had been where the thick darkness began. The Egyptians remained motionless for 3 days. Meanwhile, during the plague of darkness, the Jews were free to enter the Egyptians' homes undisturbed. Not only did they have light where they lived, but wherever a Jew entered an Egyptian home, he was accompanied by light. He could see while the Egyptians in the same house could not. As Hashem had planned, the Jews were now able to open the Egyptians' drawers and closets to see the expensive possessions. Not one Jew, however, touched anything that belonged to an Egyptian. He merely inspected the Egyptians' possessions. Later on, the Jewish people, when they would leave Egypt, they were instructed to ask the Egyptians, give us the gold, silver, and clothing to take along. Each Egyptian would protest, I have no gold, silver, or clothes. The Jew would correct them. Of course you do, and I saw gold in your bottom drawer and clothes behind your bed. The Egyptians had to admit that they were right, and so they gave whatever they wanted. Something else happened during the plague of darkness. Among the Jews, there were many who did not believe that Moses and Aaron were really sent by Hashem to take the Jews out of Egypt. They said, we do not believe that they will ever leave this land. And even if we would do, we will certainly die from hunger in the desert. We would rather stay in Egypt. Hashem punished these evil Rishoim, wicked people among the Jews. They died in the days of darkness, unseen by the Egyptians, who would otherwise have said, see, those Jews are also being killed. They are just as bad as we are. When the plague of darkness entered, Pharaoh once again called them out. This time I'm letting everybody go. But he says the sheep and the cattle have to be left behind. And Moses said, they have to come with us also. So this is a prelude to the worst and the harshest of all the decrees was the plague of the firstborn. But beforehand, as you see the next picture here, right before they went out, the Jewish people were instructed to take a sheep, as you see here, and take a sheep and to tie it up and to inspect it for 4 days. Now this was very important because the sheep was the idol of Egypt. So you can imagine when the Jewish people were taking a sheep that they weren't too enthused, and on the contrary, very angry that they were going to take their idol and they were going to slaughter it to their God. But that was the Mesiras Nefesh in Hebrew. That's the self-sacrifice the Jewish people did before they left. And also before they left, they had to bake matzahs. Here the Jewish people are. It's another nice little picture of how the Jewish people are making matzahs and preparing the more of the bitter herbs. And until this day, on every Passover, Jewish people are still eating the matzah that they had to eat, like the thin wafer bread and the maror, the bitter herbs, on that night. And we're still doing it. Now comes finally the last plague, which is at midnight, right before the Jewish people had to leave. Here's the picture of the plague of the death of the firstborn. On the first night of Passover, at the exact second when midnight struck, the Almighty came to Egypt together with 900,000 destroying angels. Hashem killed every Egyptian firstborn person, both boys and girls. In homes where the firstborn child had moved away, the next oldest child in the family was killed. Even after an Egyptian firstborn had moved to a country outside of Egypt, he died. The firstborn animals died too, because the Egyptians prayed to them. Had they not died, the Egyptians might have said, well, our gods, the animals, brought this plague. And Hashem also brought the Egyptian images. When the Egyptians entered their temples the next morning, they saw that all metal idols had melted. The stone idols were broken and the wooden idols were rotten. They slew every one of the firstborn, but he skipped over all the Jewish houses. And that's where the name Passover comes from the name skip over, or jumped over, in the Jewish houses. And we always remember how the Egyptians were killed and the Jewish people were spared, as the Almighty skipped over the Jewish people houses. Now, all these 10 plagues are very interesting, and we remember them on the Passover Seder night when we have the Seder. But all the Jewish people have to remember that there's a major lesson to be learned here from all these different plagues. And one of the most major lessons is that there is a difference as the Jewish people try to assimilate into the culture of Egypt, that even the Jewish people recognized, as long as, of course, the Egyptians, and it took 10 plagues for them to realize that all the plagues came on the Jewish people at that time. Now, I just want to go into a little bit of depth over here. There's an interesting question that this book, the Medrash says, brings out. I just wanted to learn it just for a second. Since the Almighty turned all the water in Egypt to blood, where did the Pharaoh's magicians, when we said they duplicated the plague also, where did they find the water to turn into blood and try to mimic the Jewish people? Wasn't a trick, but where did they get the water to make their trick? So there's 3 answers to this. Aaron turned only the water above ground into blood, but all underground water stayed clear. 2, the magicians could buy water from the Jews. And 3, according to the magician, turned rainwater into blood. But when the Egyptians tried to drink rainwater, it turned into blood. And that, my friends, is the end of the story of the 10 plagues, and I hope people appreciate a little bit more in depth, a little bit of stories, and they'll relate it to their families and friends on the Seder night. So here's one last cover picture, because here's a color picture of the Jewish people preparing the Seder night. Thank you very much, and have a good day.
Hi.
Hi. You were saying hi to me. How about saying hi to everybody else?
Hi, everybody. I got songs, I got an impossible story, and I got a letter, and
Gander.
Can I do all the talking this time, Mother Goose?
Well, might I say a few things?
You can do your part of the impossible story.
Are you going to let me do my part, are you? Hello, I'm Mother Goose. And this is...
The talent.
Oh, the talent, are you?
I'm Gander, and I'm the star.
Well, you're one of the stars. Do you want to sing your song now?
Right now?
Are we being shy now?
Honk, honk, ha, ha, I'm just pretending.
Yes, shy is something you're not really.
Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Ducks are gonna sink the ships. Life is what a dream.
Gander, that's not the way it goes.
The way I sing it, Mother Goose.
I don't know. Although the last time I looked at a stream in Saratoga Park, there were about 200 ducks. I bet they could have sunk any ship that happened to be rowing along.
See, Mother Goose?
I know what. You've been teasing me all week with a riddle. Suppose you see if you can get everybody to help me figure it out. This is the most puzzling riddle you've ever done to me, Gander.
Honk, honk, ha, ha, honk, honk, ha, ha. I really fooled her this time.
Yes, you did. All right, suppose you start with the first clue you gave me. This is really an impossible riddle. There are 3 clues.
Okay, ready, Mother Goose?
All right.
I have a pocket, but I don't wear any clothes.
Gander, I don't know what has a pocket and doesn't wear any clothes.
Clue number 2, Mother Goose? Uh-huh. Honk, honk, ha, ha. She doesn't know.
You're right, I don't know. Okay, clue number 2.
I have 4 legs, but only 2 feet.
4 legs and 2 feet? Gander, is this an impossible riddle?
Honk, honk, ha, ha. No, Mother Goose.
All right, give me another clue, because I still don't know. Maybe some of the people out there know, but I don't know yet.
I have 4 legs.
You told me that one.
No, Mother Goose, this one's different.
Different? All right.
I have 4 legs, but I don't walk.
Pockets and no clothes. 4 legs and 2 feet. 4 legs and 2 feet and you don't walk?
That's right, Mother Goose. Honk, honk, ha, ha.
Do you have any more clues?
1 more.
I don't know. All right, I'll take the next one.
My feet are as long as my legs. What am I?
Your feet are as long as your legs. Gander, I haven't got the foggiest idea what you are.
I'm Gander the goose. Honk, 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 honk.
All right, what's the answer to your riddle?
A kangaroo. Honk, 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 honk.
pocket and doesn't wear clothes, all right. 4 legs but doesn't walk.
I have.
That's right. Feet are as long. Yeah.
Kangaroos have big feet like geese. See my feet?
I see your feet.
Mother Goose, you got awful big hair today. It's all over the place.
Never mind pulling my hair, Gander. Stop that. That isn't nice.
I didn't pull it hard. I really didn't.
No, you didn't pull it hard. What do you mean I have big hair?
Well, it's all over your head.
Well, where would you think it would be, Gander? My hair shouldn't grow on my elbow.
Hair's on my elbow. Feathers are anyway.
Well, that's true, but that's not the same with people. Well, maybe my hair is sticking out a bit. Anyway, all right, now, do you have any jokes? No long ones like that big long riddle about the kangaroo.
I've got short ones.
Okay. Now, let's see if everyone else can answer them, too. Maybe they're faster than Mother Goose.
Maybe they are. Okay. Why did the cannibal spit the clown out?
'Cause it didn't like all that funny-colored hair? It didn't taste good?
You're partly right. Didn't taste good to the cannibal. Cannibal spit it out 'cause it tasted funny. Honk, honk, ha, ha. Clown tasted funny. Honk, honk, ha, ha.
Gander, I think they got it. I do think they got it.
This is a bird joke. Bird joke, bird joke.
All right, a bird joke.
How do chickens stay fit?
I know this one, Gander.
No, Mother Goose, you don't.
I know this one.
They exercise. Mother Goose, you're not supposed to know the answer.
Sometimes when you tell a joke, people have heard that one before. I told that one to you, Gander, don't you remember?
Feather sticks.
Oh, there's no need to get angry, Gander. You got me with a riddle, and you got me with one of the jokes.
Do you know your impossible story?
I know the part that you taught me, but I think it's important that you tell everyone what an impossible story is.
Don't you know what an impossible story is?
Well, Gander, many of the children might know what it is, but suppose there's one or two who don't. It's not really fair to tell them an impossible story if they don't know what it is.
Okay. An impossible story is one that couldn't happen. Ever, 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 ever.
I suppose you tell them just a little bit more than it couldn't happen.
Well, it's fun, and it's neat to think about.
Okay, that's pretty good for an impossible story. Okay, now,
You start, Mother Goose. This is a bird story, a bird story. Honk, 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 honk.
Gander, you sure do like bird stories.
They're the best. Aren't they the best?
All right, a bird was floating through the sky.
It met a cloud who couldn't cry.
Each time it tried, its eyes stayed dry.
Splish, splash went the bird floating by.
That's an impossible story. Now, who told you about impossible stories, Gander? I don't remember telling you about impossible stories.
The fairies, Mother Goose.
You were at the pond again.
Yes, I was. I love the fairy pond. Mother Goose, my letter, my letter, my letter.
Oh, that's right. You want to get it out, Gander?